Hi everyone, Joe March here, also known as Sorcerer, and today we're going to continue what we started last video, reading some more of the Book of Tiamat, Veritas Tiamat, as channeled and written by me apparently. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go back and watch last week's video, titled Veritas Tiamat, where I explained the whole concept of how this thing was being written. At that time I had 6 pages and that was supposed to be everything, but then because of going through the process of reading it, thinking about it, I felt maybe there's more to this thing, so I went and did the exact same practices again, got more content, figured I'd share it here, thought you guys would like that thing. So the content I'm going to read is going to sound completely batshit crazy if you didn't listen to the first video, because you're going to be like, what the fuck is he talking about? Keep in mind that this is all supposed to be kind of metaphorical because it's my own subconscious mind just spewing out stuff instead of me analyzing it and giving you whatever feedback from that. But I find that really interesting to build this sort of religious-like document, even though it's not really a religion, but that's kind of the spin we're going for here. So we're going to actually get into the process, and by the process I mean how you do the things that were discussed in the previous video. It's going to be like a tutorial of actually doing that, and then we're going to get into Tiamat's specific path. I think that should be interesting. But again, all of this, keep in mind, this is not like to be followed as a real thing. This was just an exercise to see what comes out of my subconscious when I try to do a combination of basically the equivalent of journeying while writing. And it was pretty interesting. So we're going to start where we left off, the process. There are many ways to connect to the inner self and find one's God self. Shamanistic practices, occult traditions, and religious rituals across the globe include methods to do this exact thing, though it's not often apparent this is what they're doing. If one of these traditions is yours, it's best to simply use the tradition alongside the awareness that you are seeking the God self, and the rest will work itself out for you. If you are not called to a specific tradition, or do not want to follow a spiritual practice, but still want to find and interact with the God self, this can be done by following some simple steps. Meditation is an excellent first step in learning to move the mind into a receptive state where one can enter their own subconscious. It does not matter what form of meditation is practiced, so long as the result of the practice is relaxation of the body, quieting of the part of the mind which is planning for the future or dwelling on the past, and entering a daydream-like state of being present in the moment. While in this state, you will feel different, beyond self-judgment, in a state of being. This state is the one needed in order to perform journeying or to talk to the God self. In fact, once you have felt what it's like to enter this present state, meditation is often no longer necessary. You will find that you can drop into and out of this state readily with enough practice, skipping the lengthier process often involved in sitting quietly. Once you can enter this state, you must practice being open to whatever comes to your mind, while simultaneously working to not affect what you see, hear, smell, or feel. If you find yourself falling into a full-blown visual hallucination of sight and sounds, this is fine, so long as you do not try to control what you are being shown. The instant you start consciously directing the vision, you lose the journey state and enter an imaginative state instead. When imagining, we show ourselves what we want to see. When journeying, we simply allow ourselves to see what we need to see. So be careful not to slip into imagining. For some people, what comes to mind may be as simple as an emotion or sensation that will help them interpret what they're feeling, perhaps something they feel deeply but have kept hidden. For some people, they will find their mind directed to think about something specific or pulled to perform some creative activity that allows them to dive into some aspect of themselves they were previously unaware of. For some people, they will see images of places or events that have metaphorical meaning to them, like a dream happening while awake. For some people, they will hear a voice, as if another being is speaking to them directly, and some will even see another being standing before them, or at least get an impression of what said being looks like in their mind. You cannot control the way your God self speaks to you. It is different for different people and sometimes changes over time, but you can be assured that what is described above is interaction with that self. If what you experience is negative, this means your God self is currently a shadow. There is some part of yourself or your past that you either reject or refuse to acknowledge, and all these repressed parts of yourself are overpowering your God self. You will not be able to talk to your fully actualized God self until you have faced your repressed aspects and past traumas and accepted yourself. This process is called shadow work, and for most people it is the first phase they will need to go through. Continuing to practice connecting to the God self and accepting what you are shown can point you to what you are repressing, and you can use this in combination with therapy to overcome your self-loathing. For most people, once they become serious about facing this part of themselves, the God self will become helpful, willing to assist in the process of healing, wanting to heal as well. It will work with you to embrace the parts of yourself you've rejected and heal the parts that are hurt. This process can take years, but steady self-improvement will happen throughout the process. For many people, this process is easier if they also reach out to a God for assistance. This is done by opening yourself up to the universe around you and calling out in your mind, while in the previously explained state, to a God, demon, angel, etc. of your choice. If you have reached the point where you can interact with your God self, this being will appear to you very quickly and communicate with you in the same way. You'll also find that your God self has seemingly vanished or is no longer communicating. This is because it is your God self taking on the image and personality of the God you called to allow you to communicate with it. Often this works best if the God you reach out to is one you have a strong draw toward. It is, in such cases, your God self feeling a pull toward a certain God either because it relates well to that God or sees within that God something you need. When you call such a God into your God form, the result can be fantastic. Once a God has been channeled by your God self is forever changed. It will take on some of the aspects of that God and will take the advice that was given by that God to heart. This can make your God self better able to assist you in your shadow work. Additionally, there are many people who may not have a negative experience when they first reach out to their God self, but may still have repressed aspects of the self. In this case, the God self is still partially shadow, but is not so overpowering that you cannot have pleasant interactions with the God self. Once you reach out to a God with such a God self, the God will often instruct you in some way of something you need to do to improve yourself. This improvement is usually a means to getting you to learn about some repressed part of the self so you can acknowledge and accept it before it gets out of hand. In fact, even people who are finished with shadow work will have this happen from time to time, as we are constantly changing beings who are at risk of repressing new aspects of our growing and evolving selves. The way to know that you have completed this first phase of shadow work is when you feel true love. You'll suddenly be overcome with a love that you never knew you were capable of feeling, a love for yourself and a love for the world around you. This is not some superficial statement about loving your fellow man, but an actual emotion that fundamentally changes the way you view reality. You will be overcome with an understanding of how hateful and scared you once were, and how living like that is no longer who you are. It's liberating beyond expression. If you're already someone who's tapped into such love of self and existence around you, then you'll be one of the lucky few who can skip phase 1. Once you've completed phase 1, the God self will become a peaceful being who longs to assist you in further developing the self. The God self will long for you to truly know yourself, and in doing so, truly know it. So you will feel drawn to try new things, experience the world more fully, and delve into your subconscious for meaningful visions. The God self may even feel compelled to be more active in your conscious life, interacting with you even when you're not purposely entering the previously described states. For some people, this will move into a period of convergence, where you will have moments where you feel your God self and you as one. The conscious self becomes less rigid, and the subconscious becomes more accepting of your desires at the same time. It is as if the conscious and subconscious are becoming more active in each other's environments. You'll find yourself recalling more dreams and often lucid in them, and you'll find yourself having non-intrusive visions in the waking world that help you understand yourself and others you meet. For some people, there will be a desire to connect to the cosmos around you, to connect to the Great Mother. The feeling of overflowing love that has entered your body helps you to see how reality is all connected and causes you to want to delve deeper into understanding that feeling. For these individuals, the God self will become a conduit to full connection while in meditation and eventually even while not. For some people, a desire to understand reality and seek to understand the formless entities known as gods will grow within them. Such people will use the earlier described method to call gods into their God self so they can experience interacting with them. As this is done, the God self will take on aspects of these gods, and through the God self, so will the individual. This process will help show the person how little of the conscious mind is actually them, and how malleable their personality truly is. Often, if you experience one of the above three possibilities, they'll lead into each other, causing you to experience all three. If an individual discovers a god that they work very well with, and who they would be happy to work with exclusively, they can choose to have that god merge with them. This causes the god self to transform, taking on a great amount of the aspects of the god, and thus becoming what is known as the teacher. The teacher will then work with the person to further the convergence of the conscious and subconscious, and achieve longer feelings of connection to everything around them, while also transforming the personality of the individual in such a way that it begins to view reality in much the same way as that god. This process is the only way to come to an understanding of what the Great Mother truly is, and to fully experience her. For it is only by becoming like a god ourselves that we can understand the wholeness of it all. However, we must be careful which god we choose to merge with, for it will irreversibly change who we are. So that, of course, brings us to Tiamat's Way. Tiamat is like a dark mirror of the Great Mother. She is a direct representation of the chaotic forces of life, death, and rebirth. She exists as the very soil we walk upon, an incarnation of nature. She is the tide, ebbing and flowing, and sometimes pulling people down into the depths without warning. It is these aspects of the Great Mother that she represents. As such, it is only recommended that one choose Tiamat as the god to merge with if they align with her way. She, unlike the Great Mother, expects those who work with her to undergo great change. This means she will bring them face to face with difficulty, often forcing them to reevaluate who they are and what they care about. Adaptability is the gift she grants, but only to those willing to embrace the truths she reveals and allow themselves to change. For those unwilling or unable to accept her harsh revelations, insanity awaits them. It is for this reason that one should be certain of their desire to work with Tiamat and willing to take on the high risk of losing themselves completely before merging with her. Up until this point, everything that has been written in this work has been God-neutral, meaning you could use what was provided to understand the Great Mother, find the God Self, and even call upon gods without choosing a god to merge with. However, everything that will be written from this point forward assumes either the reader has chosen to merge with Tiamat, or the reader is curious about what it means to merge with Tiamat. While the previous passages were channeled from Tiamat, the focus of them was an overview of reality as it pertains beyond her specific path. What lies ahead are teachings specifically aimed at potential followers of Tiamat's Way. The opinions and tenets expressed from this point forward are no longer views and laws that would relate to work with any god. They are specifically the views of Tiamat and what it means to follow her way. Chaos. Tiamat is a primordial representing chaos. She can appear in any form she chooses and ask those who follow her way to embrace the hidden meaning behind this as it relates to them. While we cannot shapeshift the way she can, Tiamat informs us that the persona we show to others, and even the persona we show to ourselves, is only an illusion. To know who we really are requires observation of our actions, not our thoughts, beliefs, and appearances. As such, one can readily change their persona to seem like anything when they start to understand how little it represents who they really are. The point of this is to become adaptable, able to change to fit the situation, while still aware of what truly matters to us, that part of us that is more than persona. To do this, we must be thrown into chaos. We must have our perceived values yanked out from under us and shown to us as meaningless by our actions in the moment. This does not mean we need to seek out this change. Tiamat will bring it about for us when we least expect it. But we will likely find ourselves in situations where we're forced to observe how we really react to things that were once hypothetical. The key to obtaining this knowledge efficiently is being honest with ourselves and open to the truth. In fact, many who follow Tiamat give up lying not only to themselves but to everyone because it helps speed the process of seeing and acknowledging truth. As the student embraces these lessons, the lessons become easier and less personal. Students will not only identify the falsehoods they once told themselves and others, but will readily see the falsehoods others are telling themselves. Eventually, this will lead to a feeling of freedom from a false self the student once believed themselves to be, and a greater union with the God self. The student will also begin to see reality as it truly is. Existence is far more chaotic than we choose to believe. Our shared agreements that societies and laws have any meaning whatsoever become just that, arbitrary agreements made for convenience. We begin to see the natural world underneath, the cycle of life consuming life to survive and evolve, and it will be simultaneously beautiful and terrifying. The earliest recorded depictions of Tiamat or as an imperceptibly large sea serpent, and she often voluntarily takes on this form. Those who call upon her, hoping to learn her truths, are often struck with a terrifying image of her immense size and dragon-like form the first time they successfully reach her. It can feel like floating in an abyss of absolute darkness and having a glowing reptilian eye, larger than your body, open before you, only to see from the glow that it belongs to an unbelievably sized being beyond perception. That said, this representation of Tiamat is not her true form. This is a representation of the chaotic reality in which you live. Tiamat is reflecting to you the truth you have yet to see and how small you are in the universe. Once the student accepts the world and themselves as they truly are, letting go of their falsehoods and becoming adaptable, Tiamat will shed that form and become beautiful beyond description. Simultaneously, the once frightening reality you have glimpsed will become beautiful as well, revealing the connectedness of all things in nature when observed honestly and without favoritism. Thus, the student will come to understand that order and chaos are not opposites, but are words to represent two parts of the same whole. The order of the universe lies within the beauty of its chaos. Adaptation brings order out of chaos. The student will also find new appreciation for the arts as a form of expression. Creativity flows from the embracing of one's inner chaos, and there is much to learn about one's true self from what one creates. Simultaneously, the creative arts provide an outlet for the overflowing chaos now bubbling within the student, so that it does not find an unhealthy means of manifesting in their life. Followers of Tiamat's Way will speak fondly of chaos as they come to perceive it. To them, it is no longer a representation of lawlessness or the unknown, but a recognition of the natural world and adaptability. To them, chaos is potential. It is the ever-changing beauty of the dangerous world we inhabit. Mythology. Tiamat is not the only name this primordial of chaos goes by. In fact, she is represented by many goddesses, gods, and demons throughout different stories. Some focus on her dark feminine aspects. In other words, they focus on chaos and creativity, as we described previously. Others focus on her adversarial aspects, painting her as a force of nature or a monster of some sort, which causes change through conflict. In many of these stories, focusing on her adversarial aspects, she appears as a giant serpent or dragon. The mythological story of the serpent battling a god over the fate of the world is common across many religions of old. Often, the god was a representative of the heavens, the orderly realm of hierarchy, while the serpent was the ruler of the depths of the sea or the land of the dead, the primordial lands where we all originated from and end up inhabiting in death. The myths often depict the serpent as evil, bringing death to the world or overturning the hierarchy of the gods, and depict the gods as good, triumphing over the serpent to maintain peace and holding back change. From Tiamat's point of view, these stories are either misunderstood or purposefully misleading. The adversity we face in our lives is what causes us to grow and change. Without it, we become stagnant. The true story, according to Tiamat, is the ongoing battle between the part of us that wants peace and the part of us that wants change. Both have good intentions, but can grow to hate each other if not kept in balance. The story of the serpent versus the god is the story of the war between society and nature. The god, crafter of society and the laws bound to it, has created society to improve the lives of its people and bring stability, but the natural world does not play according to those rules, and neither do the spirits of the humans who themselves are part of that natural world. If nature overturns society, life becomes brutal and dangerous, as it was in the days before history. If society overturns nature, life becomes enslaved to an unfeeling system. The only way to live well is to balance the two, keeping them from going to war in the first place. Tiamat seeks to push back against the hierarchical forces in favor of the natural world, but also recognizes the need for balance. Meanwhile, the god of order seeks to push for greater control, but recognizes the value of nature. When the two respect each other, harmony can be achieved. When the god of order pushes too far, Tiamat goes to war. As such, Tiamat can be understood to stand strongly for freedom from oppression, actualization of the self, acceptance of change, and the embracing of the natural world. She's also easily angered by those who oppose such positions. Tiamat also sees the patriarchal society we live in today as having overstepped its bounds. She seeks to overturn many of the traditions held by those in power, and to cause those who ignore nature and the natural world to see the truth of reality as it really is, even if that means destroying society as it currently exists to do so. She does not ask those who follow her way to act upon these destructive feelings, but those who follow will find themselves disgusted by the status quo and the state of things as they are today, compelled to at least awaken others to the recognition of this unbalanced way of life we find ourselves in. That brings us to the last section that I've written, the cycle. Just as the Great Mother supports the cycle of life, death, and rebirth in all things, so too does Tiamat, but Tiamat makes this cycle personal and continuous. From the Great Mother's perspective, if an individual lives their whole life without changing, dies without learning anything, and their body is consumed by the worms of the earth, that is all according to the cycle. Alternately, if the person continuously experiences change, causing a death of the self they once knew, and emerges as a whole new self, that too is the cycle. It is simply more prevalent in that individual. This is because the Great Mother experiences the totality of change across all things, so the cycle persists regardless of the individual. Tiamat, on the other hand, shares the individual lives of those she is merged with and expects them to undergo constant change, adaptation, and evolution. She will ensure that the cycle occurs again and again and again throughout the life of the individual. This means the individual will experience a period of stability, life, followed by a period of change, death, leading to a new understanding of the self and reality, rebirth. Then the cycle will repeat. For those not accepting of this push toward constant transformation, it will seem as if Tiamat is acting as an adversary and will frighten them away from working with her, if they have yet to merge with her. For those who have merged, this will still be challenging. The process of change is never easy, but followers of Tiamat's Way become more accepting of the process, expecting it as they move through life. This constant adaptation to new change is a big part of what it means to be merged with Tiamat. The cycle is never-ending. The periods of rest grow shorter between periods of change as the individual progresses. While it is impossible to know the truth of what happens to us when we die, Tiamat seems to indicate that the cycle continues. It is unclear if this refers to an afterlife, in which the individual continues to be merged with Tiamat, reincarnation to a new physical life, or simply reintegration with the universe as a whole, becoming the dust of the earth and food for the trees and worms which themselves experience the cycle. And there you have it. That's the latest additions to Veritas Tiamat. I hope you enjoyed what was written. There may be more if I'm inspired to write more, in which case I'll be making a part 3. If I'm not inspired to do more, then that's it. Because honestly, from my point of view, this is just laid out. There's not more to it. But it really isn't up to me, is it? I mean, kind of, depending on your view on how this stuff works. It's either up to my subconscious or it's up to Tiamat. So I don't know. We'll see. If more comes, I'll share more. Until next time, safe travels.